forest didn't just swallow him, it mirrored him. In Chapter 7, the timeline ruptured. Jack Barrett vanished before the eyes of his fellow airmen, drawn into a spatio-temporal distortion no protocol could explain. Sergeant B, forced back into the anomaly under covert orders, retrieved Jack, but not without cost. 5 men witnessed the impossible. One of them, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, was later identified as a preconditioned asset. Programmed with linguistic triggers, his memory fragmented for strategic use. The others, Haynes, Moreno, Vickers, and Avery, were debriefed, sanitized, and reassigned. Their testimonies now sit in classified vaults, surrounded by redacted transcripts and pseudo-scientific footnotes. A second time-dilation bubble was constructed, rushed, unstable, but functional. What returned from it was Jack Barrett, or a version of him. What remained behind, somewhere beneath the Capel Green node, is a question the Pentagon still won't answer. Now, in Chapter 8, the hearings resume. Congress demands specifics. What equipment was used? How was the Soviet satellite retrieved and reintegrated into the timeline? Why were Barrett and Sergeant B's memories wiped? And how does this shape the defense posture of the United States in 2025? What they don't yet know is that the signal never left. It adapted. The men changed. Reality flexed. And a mirror was left behind, waiting, watching, reflecting something no longer entirely human.
Under a forest crowned in ash, we vanish from the lines of time. A pulse was born, a name erased, our echoes folded into rhyme. They said we walk through light and shadow, but never told us what we'd find. Our voices buried in the marrow, while others rewrote humankind. Struck the earth below. It bent with Jack through quantum scars, a silent orbit we don't show. Memory burned and truth was sealed. Our minds reset, our names concealed, but through the veil we still recall the breach that dared to swallow all. So summon us from light unspoken, from shadows cast by secret will. Though time and oath remain unbroken, we walk the forest still. Oh,
Senate Intelligence Committee, hearing room, present day. Dr. Voss, please clarify one more time. What equipment was used to retrieve Technical Sergeant Barrett from the phenomenon? every eye trained on the screen showing thermal overlays and radar inversion from that night in 1980. The chamber had grown quiet. Too quiet. Voss leaned forward. His voice was precise. We used a modified phase-tuned harmonic array, originally developed under Project MIRRORLINK, paired with a classified psionic amplifier constructed under the COBRAMIST derivatives. The key was frequency matching. Jack had become entangled with a field operating outside of linear time. Dr. Voss, explain, how did you retrieve Sergeant Barrett from the time-dilation bubble? Voss clasped his hands. We never expected it to be repeatable, but we monitored harmonic decay patterns and spatio-temporal bleed just outside Capel Green. Using an array of synchronized field generators, variants of directed LF emitters, we were able to reconstruct a phase pocket and draw him back in through resonance matching, like plucking the right frequency from a field of static. I required the most precise operation yet attempted. With Pike's oversight, a second time-dilation bubble was artificially initiated using harmonic pulse arrays positioned around Capel Green. Sergeant B, still unstable from the previous encounter, volunteered to go. The bubble formed. A static storm spread across the forest. Sergeant B stepped into the mist. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, a pulse. Both men returned. Jack collapsed first, followed by Sergeant B moments later. Each had burns on their hands, subtle distortions to their biosignatures, and identical black rings on their inner forearms where no injuries had previously existed. They were medically stabilized. Then, wiped. A chemical memory scrub was deployed. Hypnotic reinforcement layered atop blank space conditioning. When they awoke, they remembered only that a storm had interrupted their patrol. Senator Walden narrowed his eyes. And the Russian satellite? It wasn't destroyed, Voss admitted. That was a cover story. It was reabsorbed, temporally displaced, then pulled back into our frame after the convergence. It didn't crash. It was folded back into the loop, reinserted into a non-linear sequence using the same temporal geometry that pulled Jack out. We believe it carried data, perhaps even an early response from the phenomenon. Christopher Hunter Green, seated beside Voss, added, "We brought it in the loop." Same as Barrett, and we learned more than we intended. Hunter Green explained further. Inside a reinforced containment chamber, the Russian satellite was suspended in a magnetic sling. Its hull showed signs of exposure not to heat, but to compression. Time compression. When Pike and I reviewed the scan, we discovered we recovered a payload. But not just that. We recovered language. That it transmitted before it folded. Transmitted? What was the response? Hunter Green responded. A waveform stretched across the screen, almost organic. It transmitted Jack. Murmurs erupted. And what became of the Soviet frog team sent to retrieve it? Hunter Green answered. The team was taken into custody under Section 9 protocols. All data collected from their recovery effort was absorbed into ECHOFRAME, and their memories chemically erased. Their involvement was never disclosed publicly. Just like Jack and Sergeant B, Walden said. Their memories were wiped too. Correct, said Voss. We couldn't risk them recalling what the signal had embedded. What happened to the 5-man team? Hunter Green replied. The 5-man Air Force team dispatched by the wing commander had returned to base shaken, speechless. Each of them was pulled from standard duty and routed into a temporary debrief cell inside the subterranean annex beneath Building 472. The men had witnessed the impossible. Jack Barrett vanishing into a vortex of flickering plasma. Sergeant B pulled toward the anomaly before the field collapsed, and a voice broadcast directly into their minds, asking them one question. Do you remember who you were before? One by one they were interviewed. Each account matched in tone but diverged in detail. Time distortion, light inversion, Jack vanishing in a burst of resonance. Sergeant Moreno trembled. He was there, then not, like he melted into the pulse. Vickers simply whispered, "It spoke to him, not to us, to him." But Denning was different, calm, measured. Hunter Green nodded. "He's already embedded." "You mean controlled?" Hunter Green fired back. Denning, their CO, had been programmed in advance, trigger words embedded during earlier Langley consultations with the CIA. He didn't remember issuing the call to advance on the anomaly, but the command had come from him. And now I took full control of his career, and he answers only to me and the CIA director. The official story relayed to the base was surgical in its simplicity, a night training operation simulating Cold War radio failure protocols. Radar malfunctions were blamed on outdated calibration. Lights were attributed to an atmospheric inversion layer. All personnel on duty were rotated, reclassified, or moved. The event was buried before sunrise. To the security teams at the East Gate and the WSA, the narrative was clear: a test of emergency readiness, an exercise involving electromagnetic interference simulations. "Dr. Voss," came the voice of Senator Hayashi, "how has this incident shaped our current defense technology?" Voss didn't blink. "You use it every day. The radar blur correction in modern stealth fighters, the adaptive optics in your hypersonic missiles, even the predictive targeting algorithms in drone swarms, all seeded from waveform data recorded that night." From Jack. Silence fell. "So you admit the operation was still active beyond 1980? Hunter Green gave a thin smile. "It never stopped." "And how many more like Jack are out there?" Hunter Green leaned forward. "That depends," he said, "on how many remember." The shadow left behind that night was not just born of fear or flight. It was a mirror, dark and deep, that wakes in those who dared to sleep. The light may have vanished from the treetops, but the imprint remained, etched into more than just soil. It was now in systems, in circuitry, in minds. The event at Rendlesham had crossed a threshold not meant to be returned from. Congress had heard the fragments. The scientists had buried the rest, but in the silence that followed, one truth echoed louder than any transmission. They weren't just witnesses, they were participants in something still unfolding, and what came next would no longer be confined to the forest.
Through the silence of time, I walked alone, but the stars knew my name in undertone. From Rendlesham woods to Saturn skies, I carry the echo, I lived the why. It wasn't the end,